was Catholic, and he figured that she would not go unless I went with her. So I said, sure, I'll go. I'm sure that there's one thing that I would be able to learn and take away from that could benefit me. So we went in on a Thursday night and had to give up watches and came out on a Sunday. And it was interesting because the theme of the retreat was love one another. And I frequently thought about Michelle and if these devout Catholics would love her for the person that she was. It was a very enlightening weekend for myself, and I came away with much more than I ever anticipated. But the day after I got home, when I was kind of reflecting on the weekend and reflecting on my experience, I don't know if you call it an epiphany or what, but I was overcome with emotions, and I had this knowing, and I knew in my heart Michelle was going to die. I was not sure when, and I was not sure how, but I also knew that I had been put in her life to help her through the emotional aspects of the dying process, and also to make sure that when she did pass away, that she knew that she was 100% loved and accepted. It felt like a task that I was handed to do, and I accepted it. So at that time, after that, I stepped things up a notch with my crossing my boundaries. I introduced her to my husband and my 2 children, and my boys were 9 and 12 at the time. And we just took her under our wing and made her part of our family. She visited our home on numerous occasions, and most notably her 57th birthday. We all wanted to make that birthday extremely special for her because I knew it was going to be her last. I gave her she had my cell phone number, my email address, my home phone number, and they just kind of rolled off my tongue. And I had never done that before either. I knew better that if I gave all my patients my cell phone number, my home number, I would not have a life. But crossing these professional boundaries just felt like the right thing to do. And it was interesting, after down the road I was talking to a coworker of mine about this, and she said, you know what, sometimes we have to cross those professional boundaries. It keeps the humanity in what we do. So my youngest son, Chris, and Michelle developed a very special relationship. He was 9. One activity that they had in common was playing chess. Once Michelle found out that my boys enjoyed playing chess, she ordered a special chessboard that was designed for a blind person. And it had, the darker squares were raised up a little bit, and the lighter squares were, down a little bit, so you could feel the difference between the 2 of them. And the chess pieces, the one set of pieces were flat on the top. So watching her play chess was an amazing thing to watch, because she had to do everything by feel and memorization. And she was extremely good. She hadn't played chess for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And she would frequently joke around with Chris and tell him things like, well, maybe next time. And she would beat him, but there were times where she would let him win so that he would continue playing. But he would joke around with her, or she would joke around with him and say, next time I will blindfold myself, and maybe you'll have the advantage. Chris would even spend time trying to blindfold himself to try to figure it out. They had a very, very special relationship. And she also spent time teaching Chris how to read and write Braille. And being the smart little guy that he was, he picked it up just like that. So it was very cute, because Michelle and Chris would pass notes back and forth through me when I would go visit her. Here, Mom, give this, because she eventually bought Christopher his own Brailler so that he could do this. So they would pass notes back and forth, and she would purposefully make mistakes on hers to see if he could catch them. He always did. So she adored Christopher, and he adored her. It was a beautiful thing to observe. So my so-called knowing that I had 2 months prior, after the Crecile turned out to be correct. During the week of August 2006, I had two additional experiences that were similar to the original one. I had pre-arranged to take this week off many months before. My mother-in-law had arranged to take my children for the week, to take them to Yellowstone Park. And Michelle's two caregivers had asked me, she had two caregivers that alternated 5 hours of care a day. And they had both wanted Thursday and Friday off. And I said, oh, well, since I have the week off, I would love to come and take care of Michelle. And this was all prearranged quite some time before this week. Well, so it was a Monday, August 7th, and it was August 7th because it was my birthday. And I drove down to Missoula to drop my kids off with my mother-in-law, and she was going to bring them to Butte. And while driving home again, I had that same feeling that I had after the Cursillo. I had a rush of emotions, and I thought to myself, something's going to happen this week. That's the feeling that I had, and I thought, well, but how can that be? Because there was no physical indications that her condition was really worsening. She had an underlying diagnosis of emphysema, so she was quite compromised, but she was holding her own. So at that time I came home and I shared the information with my husband, and his comments to me, maybe you're looking too much into this. I said, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I just have to let this go. But then I thought in the back of my mind, if this really does happen this week, this is kind of bizarre. And I thought, if this happens this way this week, this whole thing has been so orchestrated. So the week went on, and I did start noticing a few subtle changes with Michelle, but there was nothing that I could put my finger on. The one thing that I did notice is she just wasn't as mentally sharp, and that was the only thing that I saw that was different. I thought it might be medications. I went through all of her medications. I counted all of them, and it was clearly not medication-induced drowsiness. So on Thursday, she came over to our house, and on Friday, I went over to her house for the day to take care of her in place of her caregivers. And that afternoon, I had that feeling again. And I thought, something's not right. And I had to turn around and go home about 5 o'clock, so I called one of her caregivers, and I said, can you come over tonight and stay with her? I just don't feel that she should be left alone. I don't know what's going on, but and her caregiver said, well, I can't do that, but I can stop by in the morning. So I went home, and again, I told my spouse, I said, something's not right. Something is not right. She cannot be left alone. And he said, why are you questioning your intuition? And I said, you're right, I'm going back there, and I'm packing my bag and I'm staying the night. So that's what I did, and I got Michelle ready for bed, and I told her what I thought was going on, because we had a very open communication regarding where she was with the disease process, but it was very difficult because I didn't want to let her go to sleep. So I got her all tucked in, and I got a blanket and a pillow, and laid on the floor at about 3 o'clock in the morning. I turned the light on, and she was dying. She was still a little bit responsive, but I knew what was happening. So I just spent the next couple of hours with her, and sitting with her, comforting her, talking to her, encouraging her to let go, because she had struggled enough. And at 7 o'clock in the morning on August 12th, Michelle died in my arms. So it was a pretty profound experience for myself that like I said,